So I grew up in apartheid South Africa as an English-speaking white boy. I only became politically conscious when I was already 18 years of age, because prior to that, I had been subjected to and sucked in this incredible propaganda of victimization of the white people, where every piece of news, every message we were getting, every joke, the butt of every joke was the stupidity of the black man, the inability of the black man to look after himself, never mind the country, to be ignorant, uneducated, break everything he touched. The messaging was that all violence was black violence, that all crime was black crime, that you had to fear black people. And a huge amount of that fear was that if we let them into the political process, into the governance of the country, that they would do to us exactly what we had done to them for decades, which would be to turn around and oppress us, to murder us, to take our stuff, to move into our houses. It was a very popular story that the ANC, prior to the 94 election, when it was still an illegal organization and Nelson Mandela was still in jail, and the armed wing was exiled to Zambia and Mozambique, and Mkhonto Wezizwe, was that they promised all of our domestic servants that those servants would be given the house they worked in when the ANC ruled. And these stories were told amongst the whites to bolster our resolve never to let these black people run our country. And it was only when I became conscious of that from 18 onwards that I realized not only was this a terrible lie that was actually oppressing us as well as the people that we as a white nation, white minority, were oppressing, but that actually what happened subsequently from 1994 onwards was far more of a reflection of the nature of black South Africans than any fears we as white South Africans had been fed and believed, right? And I see direct parallels with what's happening in Palestine and Israel. We've been fed this bullshit of Israel as victim, of the Zionist government as defending, this idea that the entire Arab world wanted to whack them off the map, when in fact, prior to the Nakba, prior to Palestine being given to Israel by the colonial powers, primarily Britain, many Jews lived very happily and harmoniously alongside Muslims and Christians within that region. They weren't oppressed there. They became the oppressor through the Zionist ambition of a few Israelis. White government for many, many years in South Africa needed the violence of Mkhonto Wezizwe. They needed the odd bomb to go off. They needed terror attacks because it justified the further repression. And I've told stories about when I was in the South African Defence Force in 1987-88, 88-89. The things that were done by the intelligence service to undermine the ANC and other liberation struggles, and to pit black against black, to distract black people from action against the oppressive minority and the history of oppression. And it's time to step aside from what we've been told and look at the truth, look at the reality, look at the history, educate ourselves, and make a moral judgment based on our real values as a human.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren
and I'm Maureen.
So you guys, if you know the works of Islam Raza, this guy usually used to say, and I think I agree with him to a very big degree, the white man, in order for the white man to become powerful the way they did, and they still are powerful up to date, and the biggest reason why they conquer black people, it's because these white people have studied black people. They have studied the emotion of black people. They have studied the way of life of black people. They have studied the movement of black people. They have even studied how the black people sleep. In short, they have studied the psychology of the black people. That is why they are able to that is why they are able to that's why they're able to anticipate each move the black person will take, both emotionally, physically, and socially. And he said, once black people sit down and realize this, they should also start studying the white man. That is the only way they'll be able to match up and eventually defeat the white man.
That is strong. And by his own confession, that was a white man who grew up in the apartheid era in South Africa, and at some point he joined the army. And the only way they could boost their chest and feel like, you know, they were above and superior from the black people was through them propagating, you know, how demeaning black people and making jokes. You see, he was talking about how in his circle of friends in the army, and it's not just his unit, just everyone in general, if you're a white person, wherever you sit down and you find them joking and laughing heartily,
black people would be at the center of their jokes. So you guys, oh my god, you know,
they joke about the stupidity of the black man,
and if they were not joking about the stupidity of the black man, they were seated down somewhere devising how to keep dividing to conquer these black people. Right. And how did they divide black people? By pitting them against each other and undermining their movements. And to some degree, or to for the most part, I can say they're still operating with this mode of operandus even today. So guys, can you remember what happened in Burkina Faso? That was a very prime example of what this guy was talking about. So was it last week? Just recently, sometime this month, the Burkina Faso government caught French spies trying to undermine their leadership and trying to divide the country. So
the audacity, you people, French people, they have their own government, they have their own people to worry about.
And now that they've been kicked out of Burkina Faso, they're sending spies to try and undermine Traore's government. And that's been their modus of operandi since the early days, because this guy is also saying how if the black people would try to rise up against the oppression, they'd undermine their leadership and
give them false promises that the homes in which they are working for their masters, they would inherit that home once the masters, I don't know, go. So, you know,
and then they were dividing this group that had come as a collective to fight for their rights. They would divide them by divisive methods, you know. So, and us as a black people, what I'm saying right now, if we could just follow, because I understand Raza was saying that after he gave this advice, people were starting to see him as a diabolical mind or whatever. I think black people are very relaxed and very
peaceful people.
You don't usually see white people have a diabolical mind, you know. So when you start
very manipulative,
so when you start thinking like a white person, you're called a diabolical mind too. But if all black people could just start studying the movements of the white man, I think there's a reason you guys them at their own game. They studied black people.
Yeah, there's a reason why America used to be a superpower. I understand at some point, correct me if I'm wrong, UK used to be a superpower. Chinese people were being bullied.
Yeah,
right?
They were being looked down upon. I don't know what they were referring to Chinese people outside China. And right now they can't use that terminology because China leveled up.
You guys, there's a playbook at hand. Chinese have it. The white people in America have it. You know, I'd say Asia for the most part, Japan, Chinese, the ones that are rising up. Russia has the power, that book. And
so people are reading through these pages. It's just the black community that doesn't have any book, you know.
For some reason, we've managed to successfully remain oppressed.
True. Because they are not saying it in a bad way. It's an unpopular opinion, but they've managed to oppress us. Even right now, they're oppressing us because they're playing by a book. And right now, they know every movement of ours. You know, they know how we think. They know our psychology. They know. Before we do
the great leaders that would have taken, you know, black people to, you know, great heights. Look at Malcolm X
was deleted.
Look at Marcus Garvey
was deleted.
Look at just to mention but a few. Even here in Africa, we have similar.
We had revolutionary leaders.
Yes,
you know,
and they were all deleted. And who do we have right now?
Very bogus people.
Bogus people who can play to the tune of the. If you know what I mean, you understand,
right?
So
and the biggest advice, I think, not even from this white man, because this one is exposing how the white people operated, and that is why I casually remembered what Raza said. If black you guys, the biggest advice I'm saying right now, if black people can only study, you know, just quietly start studying these white people. you guys will be shocked. They're not even as clever as you would think they are once you study them, because they only look clever because they have information that we don't have, seemingly, you know, and because they've studied us even in our sleep without us knowing.
Yeah, another thing the white guys
before you say that, white people, black people usually ask, why are white people so interested in everything black people do, and why do white people usually insert themselves in a black business? They're not inserting themselves, you guys, they're studying you. That's why they can't, they don't seem to leave you alone. That's why they seem to be leeches in your lives, because they're studying you and taking this data somewhere, and then they're using it to apply it in their everyday life to oppress black people.
And then there's something that this guy said that I feel it's worth mentioning. He talked about how in their, you know, those group of white people during the apartheid, the government, the indoctrination, the government used to tell the white people, anybody who could listen, all right, you know, ruling through fear and instilling that, you know, white supremacy at the same time by saying Africans are stupid, they can't even do this and that, black people can't do this and that. On the other hand, they're telling their white people, we cannot let black people into governments, because the moment we give them a little power and they take over, they're going to do to us what we did to them. So
they're going to come into our homes and take our lands
and delete our people. So if they were afraid of this, it means they knew and they know and they keep knowing what they do to the other people, that's us, what they do is wrong, and they dread it being done to them and their families. But they still go on ahead and do this to, you know, Africans and black people. They still go on ahead and do it, despite the fact that they are fearing if things are overturned and this happens to them, it's going to be something, you know. Yeah, so guys, let us know what you think about this episode. Share it with someone you think that it might be helpful too, and consider subscribing if you're watching and you have not. We'll really appreciate that. Let's catch you on our next episode.